In the 6th generation of Pokemon, a new type was added to the game. That type was Fairy. Many people thought this was a good change to balance out dragons, and also increase the power of steel and poison types, myself included. That being said, not everyone agrees on which Pokemon should have become Fairy types. Nintendo clearly has a different idea of what constitutes as a Fairy. I'm Spark, and for this reason, I present to you the top 10 Pokemon that should have been Fairy type, but aren't.
Number 10.
The Mantine line. An odd choice you might think, but Mantine and Mantike swim their way onto this list for a couple of reasons. First of all, Mantine has that weird tail thing on its back that makes it look like a fairy type. A cop-out maybe, but a reason design-wise nonetheless. Mantike, on the other hand, has that small cute appearance that would allow it to be part fairy. Also, Mantike and Mantine need something to push them up competitively. They're both residing somewhere in UU. I think everyone would agree that an immunity to Dragon will push them up in tiers a little bit. Imagine having a specially defensive fairy type that could use Defog. Everyone would want one on their team after that.
Number 9.
The Swoobat line. Swoobat makes it onto this list based purely on his design. Swoobat just doesn't look like a psychic type. The heart in his nose makes him look like a fairy if anything else. Not to mention his signature attack, Heart Stamp, sounds like a fairy type attack as well. At least to me. Swoobat could use a competitive boost, and this would help it along its way.
Number 8.
Blossom. Blossom is pretty much in the same boat as Swoobat. It looks like it could work as a grass fairy type, and the reason it's higher than Swoobat is it looks a lot more like a fairy type than a bat. I also noticed that when making this list that most fairy types are fairly specially defensive. Examples of this are Sylveon, Florges. Blossom also has a decent special defense stat, which happens to be its highest stat as well. Blossom could also use some pushing up in tiers, like the last 2 entries, and plants Blossom firmly on this list. What? You don't like bad puns? Yeah, tough crowd.
Number 7.
Pachirisu. Pachirisu needs to be a fairy type for the pure reason that it looks like one. In fact, it looks more like a fairy type than Dedenne. Also, like the last entries, it needs competitive pushing. Nuff said.
Number 6.
The Masquerade line. Masquerade looks like something different from the other Pokemon with its typing. Instead of the generic butterfly or beetle, it does something different. It looks like a fairy bug type. And the only one in its typing that really even comes close. Its wings even look like fairy wings. It also needs a lot more buffing in tiers. I'm pretty sure it's RU. Not 100% sure though. Besides, if it had fairy typing, it might actually live up to the Intimidate ability.
Number 5.
Dino. I think I'm not the only one surprised that Dino didn't become a fairy type. Dino's pink body and cute appearance just scream fairy typing. According to its Pokedex entries, it can tell how someone feels by hearing them, which, in all honesty, sounds like a fairy's ability. And it's even in the fairy egg group, not to mention its Nurse Joy's assistant in the anime. It also needs some competitive buffing to put it on par with Pokemon like Chansey and Blissey as a wall. This puts Dino firmly at number 5. Oh, hi there, Mega Dino.
Number 4.
The Manaphy line. Fiora isn't really a pre-evolution to Manaphy, so I'm just going to call it the breeding line for the time being. On to the reasons that the Manaphy line should be fairy. There's only one of those Pokemon in the fairy egg group, despite being genderless, that we all assumed would be a fairy type before the X and Y were released. It also has a small cute appearance that happens to be the hallmark of fairy types. One reason it didn't get any higher though is because it didn't need any competitive buffing, with Tailglow being a thing. If it gained the fairy typing, it would gain a dragon immunity, which would be super overpowered and would probably boot it all the way up to Ubers, which would be kind of annoying. This puts Manaphy solidly, or rather, liquidly, on the list at number 4.
Number 3.
Dunsparce. Dunsparce is the ultimate example of a Pokemon that really needs competitive buffing. Dunsparce is literally never used in competitive and has no merit in it. The other Pokemon has one reason or another that would make it useful. Manaphy has Tailglow, Audino is tanky, Mantine is still a decent special wall. Pachirisu won the World Championships for God's sake, but Dunsparce? Dunsparce has nothing. Has a mediocre typing, mediocre stats, and a mediocre design. Speaking of the design, I know I'm not the only one who thinks those wings make it look like a fairy type.
Number 2.
Mega Absol. We all thought it was going to happen. If you say you didn't, you're lying. It gets wings for crying out loud. and it was announced around the same type fairy types were. It was too big of a coincidence not to be so, but it wasn't so, and Absol became a pure dark type. I feel like Mega Absol would be used way more if it were a dark fairy type. This would buff it farther than the rest by gaining the fairy typing, most likely all the way up to OU. It would neutralize his fighting weakness and gain dragon immunity, as well as play rough stab. It would be awesome. Also, Mega Absol gets the ability Magic Guard, which, in my opinion, doesn't really fit a dark type very well.
Number 1.
Licky Licky. Licky Licky deserves to be a fairy type. The logic is too impeccable, and it goes as follows. Fairies are good, Licky Licky has Wi-Fi belly, Wi-Fi is good, therefore Licky Licky must be a fairy type. And that was the list. Gives us likeses and favorites and subscribeses and yeah, we'll see you all next week. Just kidding. The real number 1 is the Sinnoh Lake Trio. These things look more like psychic fairy types than Gardevoir. They have almost everything that I would want for a fairy type, as the hallmark small and cute appearance, they need a bit more competitive buffing, and although it isn't in the fairy egg group, it's a legendary so it can pass it by on that. Masquerade especially looks like a fairy due to its pink coloring. Also, their names have the words Pixie, Sprite, and Elf all hidden in their names. Uxie, Mespritz, and as Elf. This makes the Sinnoh Lake Trio number 1 on my list of top 10 Pokemon that should be fairy types but aren't. If you disagree with my list, feel free to make your own list of your own top 10 favorite Pokemon that should be fairy types but aren't. But until then, this is Spark, signing out. Cue the thanks for watching sign!